Platinum Partner App Supply. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's start a panel discussion on transforming OTT into a platform for masses by 2025. I will invite our moderator for this session, Mr. Ashish Sherwani, Partner Media and Entertainment Advisory Services, EY. Now welcoming our speakers, Mr. Ali Hussain, CEO Eros Now, Mr. Siddharth Roy, COO Hangama, Mr. Hiren Gada, CEO Shemanu Entertainment. Dear audience, keep posting your questions in the chat box. Panel will select a few and address them at the end. Thank you. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you so much, and I welcome everybody to this session, which is aptly named inaptly, in the sense that it's talking about whether OTT will transform into a platform for the masses in 2025. My feeling, honestly, is that it's already there, and I just want to share some numbers which I believe in. In 2020, all right, the reach of news is already 454 million people a month. Entertainment online reaches 450 million people a month. 50 million people for the first time have actually paid for a subscription on OTT in 2020, largely due to the fact that cricket went kind of paywall on Hotstar. In addition to that 50 million, there's almost 275 million people who consume OTT content with data. That's huge. All right, and you have platforms like MX Player, YouTube, and the likes for touching 400 million people MAU every month. So my contention really is it is pretty much already a platform for the masses. The only platform which really has a larger reach seems to be television today. But that's not it. It's going to keep growing from the looks of it. So between now and 2025, going back to our title of can we make it a platform for the masses by 2025, smartphones are going to increase from 450 million to 750 million. Internet subscriptions going from 750 million to 1 billion plus. Time spent growing from 4.6 hours a day to more than 6 hours per day online. So yes, it's even going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? But that's pretty cool. And to discuss the fact of within all this, how does business operate? And how do you make money? We have, I think, three incredible people. Ali, Hiren, and Singh. Welcome to all of you. And I'm looking forward to some very honest answers from all you guys. All right, let's keep the bad language down, but let's keep the insights going. So starting off with you, the first question, the elephant in the room is, does mass mean free? Ali, starting with you. You have a free product, you have a paid product. Does mass mean free or do people will pay?
So you're making me jump into the fire, Feru. Thank you, Feru. Thank you, IMAI. And it's a very appropriate topic, as Feru kind of mentioned, right? Like, is OTT going to be mass by 2025? So, can you guys hear me clearly? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm just getting a little bit of an echo, so I wanted to check. So I think, Feru, to answer your question, I think there's going to be, when you see video the way it stands today, right? I don't think the manifestation of video is going to be the same in the future. YouTube kind of changed the game, I would say, somewhere between 2013 and 2015, 16, right? Where it kind of probably changed the definition of how consumers across the world looked at video, right? Historically, when we looked at TV channels, we've looked at videos being produced or shows being produced by production houses or watching movies in theaters historically, right? Now suddenly everything kind of just aggregates within a kind of screen of sorts. So it's whether films or whether it's series. With the pandemic, specifically theatrical releases, whether they released directly on digital. Warner, actually, I don't know if you guys read about it, but Warner went back in saying that there's a 45-day window that they will release the movies theatrically and then come onto digital. So I think both of the worlds coexist, right? I think there's a different kind of programming that exists for the free world, and there's a different kind of programming that kind of exists for the paid world. Now, paid world might manifest into T-word, S-word, different kind of financial models, but it's the programming that defines whether this content is free and whether certain content is paid. And that's actually instituted by a consumer decision rather than a business decision. A lot of content like DIY videos, how-to videos, a lot of the creator channels are more recreational or more social in nature rather than recreational viewing, right? So I think that's where you create the difference, which is a consumer kind of pivot where what content is paid and what content is free. And I think that's the ethos which we've seen the kind of birth of even platforms like TikTok or the various renditions that have come about, which is Moj or Josh and Takatak and some of the others also. So I think that's more of a social behavior rather than a video behavior. And I think the video behavior, obviously on the economic side, the paid model would be a much bigger business from an economic standpoint in the future.
But
So
is
I'm kind
that
of
paid model going to be large, or is it still going to be ad funded in the main earning? What is your
I
take
think
on that?
I think India as a market has been a combination, right? So at a mature play like TV, where you're looking at over 220 to 250 million households, we're seeing a nice cyclic yo-yo happening. I call it a classic yo-yo, which started in the 80s and 90s, where TV was driven more by subscription businesses first before advertising kind of started adding to the business ARPUs, if I might call so. Similar yo-yo is going to be seen even on digital, right? Because essentially the manifestation is still happening on your large screen at home. I've got some interesting kind of facts I can share in that direction, but the point I guess is relevant is right now you're seeing a push towards subscription and payment, where it'll eventually settle down, where you would have a kind of bundle structure and hence a very similar to a pack kind of ARPU from a DTH kind of service, but just happening on OTT. I think that's the manifestation. I don't think
So,
it completely deteriorates the TV world, but I'm saying it definitely takes from the TV world and builds more also.
so in effect, what you're saying is like you had the MSO aggregating content for you. Now we have the telcos and ISPs aggregating OTT content for you, and both worlds basically will exist: the paid, the bundled, and the free. In effect.
Yeah, I think the content will differentiate because the minute you start getting into deeper India, right? So that's also an evolution of the customer, right? So it kind of starts seeping, like OTT starts seeping at the top, starts hitting middle India, and TV
Yeah.
starts getting pushed down further because the kind of programming is also
Hmm.
being catered more from that top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel, right? So
Got
I
it.
don't think you definitely eat out a pie from the TV market, and we've seen that last year with a lot of the niche channels kind of shutting down. So you're already seeing the first level of thrust. I think that thrust continues as OTT kind of matures over the period of time. There's more programming, there's more quality stories that kind of come into the platform. But I strongly believe that it will overall balloon the market, as your numbers have also suggested. But it definitely kind of eats into the TV market at some level.
Okay. Sid, how would you add on to that? What are you guys seeing?
So for us, thank you IMAI for putting this together. I mean, the way we look at it, Ashish, is actually fairly simple. Yeah. Uh, any form of media you were to look at, okay, be it print, TV, or digital today, there's a large consumer funnel which is there. There's all kinds of content that the consumer is consuming. The question will be that when you massify this audience and you want to be charging money for subscription or money for the content that you put out, what's in it for the user? And to me, that becomes a core ask when content is being put out behind a paid ecosystem, vis-a-vis what Ali was talking about, be it DIY, be it other forms of lifestyle, short video, which today already has ecosystems under the short video ecosystems, or for example, the entire social UGC space, or even in the ad funded layers, like what you had mentioned, MX Player, YouTube. All of that then drives that core yield an agenda where advertising is able to support the effective sustainability of that content creation and revenues being built out on the back of this. So, if you were to look at a similar construct like cable, where we are today sitting at roughly over 120 million odd subscribers and roughly four to a household, talking 450 to about 500 million consumers consuming a form of broadcast in that sense, very clearly there is a 350 rupees to a 500 rupee payout that these consumers are doing for a set of channels, and they're choosing that mix. In the same manner, India is so big that the core segmentation of who you want to target, where you want to target, do you want to do it on the back of ad related revenues being brought into you, or for that matter, in a paid ecosystem? It's a call that each of the services will be taking based on their approach to how business is going to be built. And I believe in India, there is a very large hybrid play, which is a mix of both, where there is going to be core sustainability. I mean, you look at the broadcast ecosystem, largely the catch up content is put under the ad wall, and then they've got obviously premium content that they're putting behind a paid ecosystem, and that's living its own uh, life in that sense. And each of them are trying to balance out to ensure that there's sustainable habit formation by the user. Even if you look at core data, Ashish, during the COVID, what ended up happening was a 3 year digital life cycle got crunched into literally 120 days. Yeah. And that itself has brought a very large tier two, tier three consumers into the main stream of consumption. And that is largely been driven on the back of entertainment, because when you are driven into any form of content consumption, entertainment becomes the most uh, closest form for the consumer to get access into. It could start by him reading a piece of review, rating, news on a piece of content or a artist or a celebrity, and it gets evolved into you consuming video as a format. And the fact that device and data have turbocharged that ecosystem. The fact that the device is sub $100 and the fact that data is like water today. I mean, it's fearless consumption. Exactly 2 years back or 3 years back, we used to have fearful consumption of data. And to me, that is the piece that's driving
But
this
tell me,
ecosystem.
but tell me something. This is a very interesting point, right? So when I look at global markets, there, the growth of Netflix, etc., is on the back of a price which is far lower than what television cable costs out there, right? Cable costs 80, 90, $100 a month. Broadband plus Netflix plus Disney plus all of it costs 40, $50. So there is a direct
Massive.
reason,
Yeah.
yeah, to cut the cord and go digital. In India, it's
Gross
still,
margin benefit.
if you're looking at 4-5 hours of consumption a day, digital still does cost more than television, right? In a pretty big way, especially if you want it on a large screen. It's different. We are moving entirely to spoil our eyes and watching a lot of video on our small screens. But in India, the cost is far higher if I want to go digital and cut the cord. So do you see this changing, Sid? And do you think this is going to drive it, or will TV always be a much cheaper option?
So let's actually, there's a larger moot fundamental question in this. India is a single TV household first. The entire content that's being created is being created for the woman in the house, because at 9 p.m. or from 7:38 in the evening, the content that's being played out is singularly being focused towards addressing and satiating that interest group in that sense. So what ended up happening was there was this massive set of consumers who did not necessarily uh, understand or would want to consume that kind of content, and they saw a choice where today that device allows them to democratically start consuming what they want. So that to me is a fundamental play out. Is that going to change? I believe that's not going to be changing, because people like Hangama are already creating content for the small screen. We are crystal clear. We believe India is going to be a small screen consuming market from a Hangama objective standpoint of view, because
So
we want to
personal
massify.
consumption, what you're saying is personal consumption versus group consumption.
Absolutely. And what we're stating is that the cord cutting environment, as we see it, would not end up happening in India, because the price at which cords get cut is fundamentally currently inelastic in that sense. Okay, so the TV household will continue, that one TV is there, he will continue to pay for that in play. And if you see data as well, which has come out, a lot of them, why are the cable DTH guys coming out with plans where if you've got 3 boxes, I'll give you this offer, that offer, to try and sustain and keep that box, as I call it, ticking in that sense. You flip this to the device, and then you're talking about audiences and you're talking about content that can be segmented and satiated to audiences, communities, languages. There's a lot. And what we were speaking the other day between Hirid by you and me was the fact that we're aware of the number of segmented players that are wanting to come and are in the process of coming, which shows that there is not only a appetite for creating businesses, but the fact there is an appetite because they see that as a need gap with the current content that's there for these users.
Interesting, very interesting. I'm going to move on to you, Hiren. Fascinating stuff you guys do in the OTT space, right? How do you see this? How do you make money here, and how do you make it mass?
So I would on this whole topic, I would like to take a step back, and I think we should look at the demographics to understand really the pay development of the pay, because if you break up India's population, I would, I mean, there are many cuts you can do, but if you just break it up in terms of per capita, actually put it into three buckets. So there's a 3 to 5% premium high-end bucket whose per capita is probably equivalent to that of Australia. And then there's a good 30 odd percent which is probably equivalent to say a Philippines or something. And then there's a mass 60 odd percent, 60-65%, which is in a way equivalent to say sub-Saharan African kind of countries. Now the propensity to pay is going to be different obviously for each of these. The first bucket is the one which is in a way already moved out of television or is in the process or will move out of television the fastest, and they're the early adopters on the pay ecosystem on the whole digital front.
That's like a 30-40 million number at 3
Yeah,
5%.
whatever. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
as I said, it's between 3 to 5%. Now, how many of them have moved? How many have churned back, etc. That's anyway
Yeah.
the challenge. The content part, what it was referring to, that do I have enough engaging content? Am I able to retain the customers, etc. But I'm just saying, if we just look at it purely, from affordability point of view, the big one will be when the next bucket moves or is ready or can move into the paid ecosystem. Today also, I believe that one paid app or thereabouts is possible in that second bucket. But as and when that bucket kind of scales up in terms of moving more digital, that in a way is, I think, going to be the holy grail for the digital paid ecosystem to develop. And the third bucket is a bucket where television itself is also targeting through free to air. So, so India is never going to be this or that, is going to be this and that, because clearly, there's as both Ali and Sid have referred to, that there's going to be audience for each each segment. That's one aspect of
Sorry, Hiren, just to summarize. So what you're saying is, if I look at the first two buckets, that's
Yeah.
really where the power lies from a pay
Yeah,
ecosystem.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that number in your mind is 150 million around to maybe 180 million or thereabouts, right? Going by
So
rough percentages that you mentioned.
see, if we do the maths, I think if we look at it from the from a per capita kind of point of view, I think yeah, probably that cutoff today will be there, but hopefully as we move
Will grow.
further in the next few years on the economic growth, etc., and people move more on the per capita ladder, I think we'll have a faster growth happening over there. Obviously, the second, this is the first point. Second point is, this second bucket is a very very value conscious bucket. It's your pay TV audience. It's your core pay TV audience in a way. Now moving them digital, you firstly, obviously, your content has to be superlative, etc. And there's absolutely no debate on that aspect. Or at least your proposition, the USP that you have has to be so unique that people want to come and consume. But along with that, this is a highly value conscious set of consumers, and there this arbitrage that was being that has been discussed already about between television and digital is something that will come into play significantly more. Unfortunately or fortunately, the way our overall paid ecosystem on entertainment has developed has actually been very poor due to various challenges in the past, that the industry has faced. Otherwise, I mean, clearly digital has a arbitrage. India is one of the rare countries where we have a reverse arbitrage on the digital versus television. So,
Right.
how that is going to be bridged, I think is going to be the big question or challenge. See, having said that, I clearly see, so in a way, if you think about it, like as Sid just referred, just a year back or pre-pandemic, what was the conversation? Will people ever pay? The conversation has moved. How big will the paid ecosystem, get to? Because, suddenly this 3 years worth of adoption cycle has got crunched into 3 or 4 months. And as a result, people at least have got the mindset that, okay, this is something you have to pay for subscription. I mean, subscription model when it probably was first introduced, a lot of people, consumers would have questioned, why should I subscribe? Why should I pay? YouTube पे सब free है. All those kind of questions were there. So I believe that, in a good way, that adoption curve is kicking in. Obviously, everyone wants the numbers to be significantly higher, but I think we are headed in the right direction. It's just these dynamics which will finally look, have a bearing on scale and things like that.
Which brings me to my next question, and back to you, Ali, for this. Is there space for 40, 50, 60 apps today on the OTT entertainment space?
I think so. I seriously believe, again, going back, and we're going to refer this plenty of times in our discussion, right? I'm sure Hirenbhai is going to bring it up, Sid's going to bring it up. There were 800 TV channels back in the day, right? I think there are going to be, the strong-hearted will survive, the weak-hearted will fail, new ones will be born. I think it's like a war, right? More kind of personnel or soldiers are going to come into the battle ring of sorts. So, excuse me. So I think definitely there is space. It's a more complex business than TV, right? TV was simple. There was a day rate time concept, right, which was appointment viewing. I remember, I won't quote names, but a fairly senior TV programming executive said that I will be able to deliver X TVR for a particular show, irrespective of how good or bad the show is, because they know what the sensibility of the walk-in is for like a 9 to 9:30 kind of time slot. Now, you go back to the same person and ask them the same question, can you confirm what that
On
TVR
digital.
on digital is going to be? And they have no clue.
We have
So I
no
think that's
clue.
a great dichotomy, and I'm talking about this dichotomy which is not even relevant. I'm talking about 5 years pre and 5 years hence, right? So it's almost
Yeah.
like the flip of the switch. So to answer your question, I think the proliferation of brands would be genre segmentation, language segmentation. I know Shimano is doing a lot in that space. Um, will be mass segmentation. You're going to see opportunities for like Korean content or Turkish content make their own play in terms of whatever their limited space in the market is. So I think it's this classic time where that chaos and that confusion allows for both opportunity, allows for innovation, allows for ambition to kind of grow in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years. I don't think the window lasts for more than 3 to 5 years before the
But
dust settles.
Ali, I have to interrupt you here and with a related
Please do.
question. All
Please
right.
do.
It was very simple in the TV era because you had to pick up the phone and talk to one person and say, "Ye channel chahiye ki nahi chahiye?" Literally, right? And that happened because you heard a word of mouth or you saw an ad and you wanted to watch a particular channel or whatever. Today, that discovery is really, really difficult. The cost of getting that subscriber is often more than what you can make from that subscriber. That's going to put a lot of pressure on those 40, 50, 60 OTT platforms. Today, in effect, what we are saying is, by default, many consumers are saying, I need my cricket, so Hotstar is a default. Kids are in the house, so Disney Hotstar is a default. But the second, third, fourth, how many subscriptions will people take? How will they discover them? And how will any of these guys make money when you're number 30?
No, so I completely agree with you, right? So that's the reason if I say, right, what's actually happening in the ecosystem is a lot of intelligence is actually being built at what you call as a launcher level. We've
Mhm.
already talked about the concept of a super app or an aggregation either being done by a so-called super aggregator or a distribution point. I won't call it a telco or an ISP, but it's essentially like the distribution pivot, right? It's almost like the start of the funnel where the waterfall kind of kicks in, right? There's a lot of intelligence being built in that middle layer where a lot of data is going in. As an industry, and I'm saying even the biggest problem that plagues the biggest OTT platforms in the world with over 200 million subs will be discovery, right? And
Yeah.
discovery tends to continue to be because it's a complicated business based on the kind of cohorts you're creating and how that cohort evolves. Nothing remains constant in this business, right? coders and people from the software world make a algorithm assuming it's going to last for 12 months. We don't even have a shelf life of 12 months before the audience changes, or there is new data being added to that pool. And how
Yeah.
does the algorithm then iterate to then make sure? Because you're always playing catch up, right? Suddenly you've
Yeah.
caught up, but audiences move forward, you're catching up again. So I think you've asked me three questions. One simple answer: discovery is still a massive challenge that the industry is trying to solve, both at an isolated level. So that's definitely a good challenge. Second is that there's a lot of intelligence being built at launcher levels, which talks about how you're able to profile a customer based on their psychographic or viewing behavior, and then become smarter based on ML models to figure out what is their kind of interest base, and hence what is the kind of content they would like to view. Um, like each of us in this room have faced a problem, even though we might be early adopters of Netflix. I can guarantee you spend about anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes trying to find that next show to watch after
Yeah.
you've concluded a show, right? So at
Absolutely.
an evolution of 200 million customers, if you still aren't able to figure out what I will watch next, you can imagine that the journey is an ongoing one, right? Specifically
Yeah.
on this piece. So I think the launcher definitely plays a key role, and there are two components. One is obviously what's the content you want to watch. The second, which we don't speak about very frequently, is price propensity and kind of disposable propensity, right? I think that's another one which will be interesting to start profiling. Is this a 500 plus rupee customer? Is this a 300 to 500 customer? Is this a par 100 rupee customers? So also creating packages based on those structures, and that package, which is dictated by the networks or by the so-called distributors, will be in the hands of the customer. So you can almost kind of, and just to share with you, one massive player in the world currently is already doing a significant amount of development in this space already as we speak, um, including an early launch potentially by the second half of this year, right? And I think the third thing that's going to change is that with the languages and with the genres and with the international content and with the various formats, we're also going to give an opportunity for innovation, for collaboration of sorts. So that audience will continue to evolve. I don't think it's the dust settles that, we will only target women, as Sid was saying, at 9 p.m. over the age of 30 or 35. I think there'll be various mini clusters of audiences that will be created. So it's not like one mass cluster where, say, it's 65% women decision oriented, but the mass will be made up of micro minis or minis, several minis of sorts. So
Many
I think
niches coming together.
yeah, so it is definitely mass. There will be one clear winner. I'm assuming that continues to be, and I'm just going to joke about this, but crime thriller Hindi speaking kind of audiences, right? For lack of better kind of classification for that sake. But there will be one kind of mass definition, but the mass is not going to be 60% share of voice. It's going to be 20% share of voice. And then
Understood.
the rest 80% will be then divided into language, genre, various other kind of cohorts that will actually start kicking in. And that's going to be drastically different for the programming economy, right? Because you're suddenly used to targeting 60% of the population. Now, how do you kind of target or keep increasing that 20% to 20, 25?
And Sid, what is your take on it? I find you guys also innovate a hell of a lot in this space. So how are you looking at this opportunity?
See, in a nutshell, my question is why don't you ask the same question to the broadcaster and the print media?
Hmm.
It starts there, Ashish. जब
Agreed.
आपके पास 800 चैनल थे,
Hmm.
so as ENY used to go and say बॉस पैसा कौन बना रहा है?
Correct.
800 चैनल थे ना सर,
Hmm.
वो ही यहाँ भी होने वाला है. There is, for everyone, there is gold at the end of the tunnel. It can be sustainable, it can be valuation, it could be value creation. Each of them will find their own mojo. All of us are not doing charity, which fundamentally means that there has to be some form of a business logic to that core sustainability. Each of us are in for the long term because the Indian ecosystem is such that it's just about starting to go out and build. You do the same analogy to music,
Hmm.
Ashish. The music business now has already gone through one full cycle of maturity.
Yeah.
In a market like India, there are currently 8 large players. Okay, 3 being global, 4 being Indian in that sense. 3 to 4 large players. Okay, so I'm saying even in the same form, when you look at video, okay, I believe that if there is a defined segment that a specific individual has the ability to create content, have a platform, because over here, remember, technology plays as what Ali was sharing as well, is a hugely important player. both for discovery, for stability, for experience. All of that goes into giving a wow experience to the user in play. Now, all of that, when you bring it within a container and you go out and put it out to a segmented audience as such, that segmented audience at the end of the day would buy it, and you would then try and make money off a subscription layer or off an advertising layer. In the entire scheme of thing, if you're able to establish your community and you're able to create discovery of your content over time, continue to add, because that is what a broadcaster did. When he put up a channel, you actually didn't get a call to say channel hai. He went and advertised.
Yeah.
He used his own network to create discovery. Post which, if we liked the content, then as a consumer, I got hooked onto that channel and started giving him the CPRPs, the TVRs, the GRPs, which then got added in for advertising and subscription revenues to get created. It is exactly going to be the same here.
So, Sid, you are saying it's the fundamental of media and entertainment is remaining the same. Good content will attract eyeballs, provided it's well marketed. But
Sir,
you're adding and saying that it will be many, many more niches rather than that 60% mammoth HSM.
I'll give you a very interesting analogy. Okay, the analogy is actually a lockdown analogy. Hangama Music has roughly done about 150 live events during the lockdown period.
Wow.
From NGO supports to artist supports to paid ecosystems to supporting environment with artists, all of that in play. You today can technically do a live in concert and create a sustainable segment, provided there is an audience that's willing to pay for that specific set of that artist from a live perspective. Okay, now you can take a brand and bring that out to the user free if you so choose, because there is a brand story that needs to be told. Or you may turn around and say that no, I want to cater to 25% at a certain price point, and that also makes my structure sustainable. So in the same manner, if you produce at X dollars an episode, then your effective ROI becomes X plus Y.
Correct.
If you create the same content at a different price point, it makes your business model look a lot different.
So the key is to know where you stand in that top 40 and cost your content accordingly.
The only difference is earlier when a person wanted to get into broadcast, he needed a certain sizable amount of capex for him to get the license, to set up the infra, and then roll the content.
Right.
In a digital environment, we believe that if you've got your product, which is a mix of tech, experience, and you are able to create discoverability, the overall math is a lot different than any other form.
Yeah, I mean, going by the standard equation, content cost plus customer acquisition cost on the cost side. On the revenue side, it's ad, subscription, transaction. And when that thing balances, all of us will be, multi-billionaires. Right?
And not only, no, it's not about multi, it's the same thing. Today, each of us partner with telecom networks because we see them as pipes. They see us as symbiotic to their pipes being consumed by users in play.
Right.
Okay. In the same way, you've got today, we're aware that Prime has a global platform where they bring in partners. We're aware Apple TV has a global platform where they bring in partners. So there's a lot of collaborative playouts that are going to happen. But as communities get built, you want more discoverability of your content, in turn your destination. Because the customer is coming for the content. He's not coming for the destination. He's coming for the content.
Absolutely. And on that note, Hiren, I'm moving on to you for the last question before we take audience questions, which is the regional side. You have devotional communities and apps. You have Shemaru Me, and you have a Gujarati play, which is extremely innovative. Right? I want to touch on the last one, which is the Gujarati play, where you really kind of own that market from a digital point of view. Is that what success is all about? How important is regional for you?
I think so. If we actually look at it differently, I mean, there's some disturbance happening.
Yeah, I think Sid and Ali, they would just mute yourself for the time being, as I will.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. So if you look at it in a different way, India is not a homogeneous country, and in a way, it's an extension of the previous point also. Why 800 channels and why so many different OTTs? But if that is the case, I mean, we are probably more like Europe. We are a heterogeneous 23 countries in one kind of situation, and as the base grows, so we are probably today at say around 400 million odd digital video consumers, whatever be the numbers. You all actually will be putting it out tomorrow mostly, so I stand corrected to that extent. But as this number grows, say in next 3 years we cross say 700 800 million kind of number. Where is the next set of consumers coming from? Their language preferences will be far more local, more vernacular kind of a thing. So therefore, regional is something that will naturally kind of play. If we mirror in a way what happened on television, right? We first had the Hindi GEC movies, then went out, news went out, regional started, and then you have a whole massive regional ecosystem on television today. In fact, regional further went from GEC into movies, into news, into music, multiple kind of thing within that. So
Dhiren, it's amazing. It's amazing today. 55% of television viewership impressions AMAs is regional.
it's regional, yeah.
44% is Hindi and less than 1% is English. Right?
So
And you see OTT heading in that same direction.
I think that's the way it is headed, and in fact, from whatever we are seeing, virtually all major languages are going to see an explosion of new entrants in the next, within, in fact, the next year itself, within actually in the next few months itself, not even the next year, because we know from various conversations, etc., that we're having is that there is a large plethora of number of people, who are kind of targeting that whole thing. See, according to me, finally, if I combine the previous question and this and point, I think it's how are we segmenting, right? How are we, what is our core proposition to the consumer? Are we delivering a great value to the consumer? Because yes, the cost of acquisition is tremendously high, and if the life cycle is very short, you're done for. I mean, because in all of these so many number of apps, etc., everyone has to fight for the space and attention. So there's absolutely no doubt about that. So I think regional definitely today seems small, but I believe that in terms of next 2 3 years, if I look at it, I think as the number of consumers grow, also there would be a lot more growth in the local and regional or vernacular ecosystem in terms of the creative quality, which is today probably not so much digital oriented. Even that will slowly. I mean, how we are seeing the evolution of say Hindi in a similar way, regional probably maybe 3 years, behind the curve or something. And I think that itself, so that in a way should create a virtuous cycle where good content will draw good audiences and good audiences will again fund good content.
Very true. I couldn't agree more. Now we have some questions which are coming in. I don't have time to take all of them. I'm just taking what I can. Will OTTs have an impact on the creative economies and the kind of content that is actually being created? I think that's a very interesting question. Totally double barreled. Who wants
No,
to take that?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are no two ways about it. And that's already happening.
That's
Let's also
already
be very
happening.
clear. That's already happening and
Yeah,
extensively happening.
yeah.
I
The
mean,
whole grammar of narration on digital is very different from all other traditional media. So that's already happening, and I think that trend is just going to explode further.
and that's the
Okay.
genre, that's the segment that we're talking about. Each of us are saying the same thing. Digital gives us the flexibility. It's that USP that we want to also drive in the stories we want to be telling to our audiences.
Fair. Second question, again, very interesting question. The role of copyright law in the future of OTT expansion. What is that? How big is the role of copyright law going to be?
My question in this would be a lot different. It would be, what is copyright? If each of us are creating our own originals, or we are aggregating that content, by default that is copyrighted content. It may be mine or someone else's, so it follows the same law of the land, where if you infringe on it, you go to jail.
Let me rephrase that question, and this is
So,
really
no, let me answer that. Let me answer that. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, technologies like blockchain kick in to protect that copyright further, right? So what I'm coming in to tell you is that whether something that we create as a platform is created by a creator, through just technologies like blockchain, you're going to be able to, for lack of more complicated words, no, I would say fingerprint and then track, right? I think that's what I'm going for, fingerprint and track.
Ali, from your point of view specifically, I'm rewording this question and adding a bit of my own. Okay,
Yeah.
saying that in the past, when there was a television broadcaster, there was a Balaji or a production house that created the content as work for hire, but the IP was owned by the broadcaster. With the OTT platform, that is changing, I feel. Right? The more and more I'm seeing cases where IP is owned by the production house and less by the platform who's only licensing it. Is that a permanent change? Where's that headed?
No, so
Actually,
I
it's a
think
business call, Ashish.
no. So I think to answer that, I think models will evolve, Ashish. I don't think there is a
Yeah,
model that's still prevalent, which is saying today
It's a
that
commercial part. I think it's got nothing to do with the copyright law. It's more a commercial
absolutely.
arrangement, between who's taking
Commercial.
the funding, etc. I don't think that has a bearing on the copyright part. I mean, copyright, according to me, is fundamental to this whole business. I think,
I
without
agree.
a sound copyright act and a sound enforcement, we are not, we don't have a business case itself. So, because then it's
And
general
IP
everyone can.
will IP ownership drive more value here, or will customer platform drive more value?
I
Let's
think
look
the
at it
jury
that
is
way.
out. The jury is out on that one. I mean, it's very difficult, I would say, at this point in time. But finally, personally, if you ask me, I think, the closer you are to the customer, that's where, you are going to be, I mean, the winner is going to be the one who's closest to the customer, I believe.
Which is why for a long period of time Netflix had a higher enterprise value than Disney. Now with Disney Plus, I think that's changed significantly. Okay, I'm taking one last question, which is what key innovations do you expect to see when as OTT massifies? I'm going to ask all of you to give me one key innovation you think you're going to see, which will help the massification of OTT.
So I'll plug in a hard sell over here. So we just announced something to do with dynamic subtitles, and we're doing dynamic dubbing. So massification means that I can take Hindi language films and convert them into Arabic or Tamil into subtitles and dubs on the fly, right? So that essentially is an attribute to massification. And we just announced this with Google Cloud a couple of weeks ago. We're already doing Arabic and doing launching Bahasa next month as an example, right? So
Wow, that's
this is
interesting.
it's an 18-month project, and it's contextual from an Indian standpoint because a lot of the original kind of content consumption literally comes from Middle India at scale. So that's what we call as massification, using technology to kind of see better.
Nice. Sid, what do you think is going to be an innovation to
I
drive this
believe
massification?
my belief in this is that the video player itself is going to transform further, and I believe the content to e-commerce play out is not a distant dream. You're going to start seeing a lot of that happen, where the player's intelligence on the back of the content that's being served out is going to define a very, very interesting charter for both the consumer as well as the platform owner.
And Hiren, what innovation from your side?
I believe massification is just a matter of time. I don't think there is any one silver bullet that is, or a magic pill that will create that. I think it's a combination of good value for money and great content that is going to ultimately create massification. There's no taking away from that, and the industry is headed in that direction. There's a lot of trial and error happening, a lot of experimentation, learnings, etc. I don't think, I mean, I believe that it's just a matter of time.
interesting. And I think some other numbers you'll see in the report when we release it tomorrow next week is just how big these direct digital movie releases have been in terms of reach. I think there's some phenomenal numbers coming out from those. And with that, I think we're out of time. I can see our host coming and giving me very dirty looks. So sorry about that. But we are bang at 1 o'clock. Actually, we are done. And thank you very much, Sid, Ali, and Hiren. It was fantastic. I always talking to you. I learned a lot. I hope the audience has enjoyed it. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your listening in, and all the best for the great year. Be safe. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.